everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It has been a cold winter out there. Bunch of rain, and it's just been an all-around mess. But today we're going to be talking about line and knots. So this is going to be a real quick video. I'm going to go over some of the line that the types of line that I use, the applications that I use them for, and the knots that I use. So let's start out with braid. Everybody knows you only really need to use braid for mostly top water or punching and flipping. That's my main applications for using braid. That's my main applications for that. I only use it for those two applications. Then I use fluorocarbon under certain situations, because I would use fluorocarbon for cranking, Texas rigging. That's pretty much my all around, except for when it's time to, well, not when it's time, but except for when I'm using a braid to leader setup, which that's mostly on my spinning rods, but I will use it on my bait casters, my casting rods, also under certain situations. And then mono, I don't really use mono except for a leader. I use that for a leader material. Now, take aside the braided line. Take aside the braided line. When it comes to my leader materials, I only use really mono when I'm using treble hook baits, because I like the stretch of it. There are times when I will use fluorocarbon. It just depends on what I'm fishing for and where I'm fishing, if that makes sense to you guys. So if I am outside of punching and flipping heavy cover and throwing a top water, outside of that, if I am using a spinner bait, I would either, depending on the situation, I would go straight fluoro, straight 20 to 25 pound fluorocarbon. Now, the only time that I would use a braid to leader in that application is if when I am doing snaps of the rod, or if I'm breaking cadence in my reel and I'm getting hit on the paws, I would then add a braid to leader setup with that, because I want that pause to be sharp. I want it to stop exactly, because mind you, braid does not stretch. It doesn't stretch at all. So with that being said, I want that bait to react to exactly everything that I'm doing. And that's with anything. Crankbait, jerkbait. Well, jerkbait, I'm using straight fluoro anyway. Crankbait, jerkbait, you know what I'm saying? Any of those moving bait, swim bait fishing. If I stop that reel, I want the bait to stop right then and there. I might give it a little to, you know what I'm saying, to aid it in stopping, but I want that bait to stop right there if I'm getting hit on the paws. If not, then I would go with a straight fluorocarbon setup, or straight mono. Those are the applications. Now the knots that I use, I only really use a couple of knots. Palomar, a uni, and then to connect my braid to leader, I would use a uni knot or a blood knot. Those are the knots that I will only use. And we're going to go and tie a couple of those right now. Okie dokie. I'm hoping you guys can see this line pretty well. I got a little bit of braided line here. And I have some 20-pound test monofilament line that I use for catfishing. So I'm hoping you guys can see this pretty well. Let's cut this off. Cut that knot off. So I forgot the hooks. Give me a second. Okay, I'm back. So, my mind is leaving me today. But in any case, like I said before, the only knots that I use is one, the Palomar, the Uni, and then my Braid to a leader knot. So I have a hook here, which is the Spear Point V-grip hooks, and these are going to be the hooks that I show you how to tie these knots. I'm not going to try to tie, yes I will do a Palomar on this 20-pound test line. So for the Palomar, it's a very simple knot. What you want to do is go through the eyelid. I like to go through the back of the eyelid, facing away from the hook. So come in through the back. Once it's on there, I want to run it right back through the eyelid so that you got one loop on one side and you have the tag end and the main line on the other. That's what I want to do. From there, you want to tie an overhand knot. Just a simple overhand knot. And again, I hope y'all can see that. Right? You want to tighten that down, which 20-pound test line is not going to. There we go. Work with me. You want to tighten that down. Now, from here, what you want to do is you want to feed the loop in. You want to feed it into your hook through it. You want to feed your hook through your loop, and then begin to pull and tighten down. Make sure, which with 20-pound test line, it's a little difficult to do. You want to make sure that your line is not on that little eye where it meets up at. You want to make sure that it's not on there. And there you go. That's your Palomar knot. The eye of the hook, as you can see right here, where that piece of wire meets the main shaft here, you want to make sure your line is not caught in that little eye. That's what you want to do. Now, there's a caveat, and I would change up the Palomar knot, which at that point I'm tying a double Palomar knot, is what I'm using braid. And I'll show you that real quick. So for braid line, and this is, how many pounds test is this? This is 15-pound test braided line. Again, you want to go through, right? Going from the back, but instead of feeding it back through, you want to loop it back in and go in through the back one more time. Right? Then you want to go back through like you're tying the standard Palomar. If I can get this line to act right. like so, where you have, again, your main line and your tag-in line. And all you really did is you just added an extra loop, an extra little piece of line for it to bite on. And then you continue tying the Palomar as you would any other time. Let me change over this way because I can tie a whole lot better this way than I can southpaw for some reason. So then you go through and you tie. Through. Cinch it down, and there you go. All it is you, instead of having one in and out, you go in and then out. Now for the uni knot. The uni knot is when I have a bait that is too big for the Palomar knot, and you would just lose out on a bunch of line, and your tag end would be just too darn long, and you would lose out. It's just a waste of line, really. So for baits that are just that big, for the uni knot, what you would do is you would feed it through. You would feed it through. You would make a number 6. Well, I'm sorry. Feed it through. I'm sorry. Pinch your 2 lines together where your hook is at. Then you would make the number 6. Good gracious. And you proceed to do your wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you will begin to tighten it down. Once you get it about here, you would add some kind of moisture, water, saliva, however you want to wet your lines, you want to wet it. And then continue to cinch it down. And there's your uni knot. Not much of a tag in the waist. You're good to go. Now, for my leader knots, I like to use the uni knot. Now, the only thing about the uni knot is that depending on your line diameter, the knot can be really kind of big, and I only really mostly use it for spinning combos. That's what I use most of the time on my spinning combos, because the line is just that daggone big. Not the line, but the knot is just that big, and it is hard to go through the guides of my spinning knots. So, with the uni knot, you want to start off with one end, you want to double them over together, okay? You want to grab both of them, and you want to make a number 6, like you're tying a uni knot. And depending on your line diameter, you know what I'm saying, you want to do anywhere between 4 to 7 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The thicker the line, the less wraps. So at that point, you sit you down a little bit, at about here, I would wet my line and then cinch it on down. Then I would go over and grab the braided line and do the same thing, but in reverse. Some people put a backward 6. I use the number 9. So I will grab it. Need a little bit more. I will go to number 9. So then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Same thing, grab both lines, start to cinch that down. Then you take both your main lines. Yeah, I got a main line. And you begin to pull to bring the knots together. And that didn't work well because the line is too darn thick. Okay, I used a small diameter, so let me start that over for you guys. But this time, let me change the diameter that I'm using. This would be, how am I going to test? This would be 6 pound test, 15 pound to 6 pound test. So we'll do that. All right. So again, go with the 6. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cinch that down. And then the 9. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cinch that down. And then bring them together. And there's your uni to uni knot, which is pretty dang small, especially for finesse. Right? There's your uni to uni knot. Now, the only other knot that I would use would be a blood knot. The blood knot, you don't really have much of a leader on it, and unlike the blood knot, the uni knot isn't the strongest knot. There are other stronger knots out there, but they take a while to tie. They take a good long time to tie. So I stick with what I can tie fairly quickly. So with the blood knot, you take your 2 pieces, this is your braid. This is your leader line. You cross over, give yourself a pretty good bit to do your wraps, and then you begin, since the braid is laying on top of your leader line, you start wrapping your leader line towards you or away from you, depending on which way you got them facing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm only going to do 5 for this one, but it's really 9 each way, because let me start over. Let me start off with the braid, but tiny line is hard to work with sometimes. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'll keep going. 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now here's the thing. Once you get to this point, you want to go in between up. Pinch that in place. Then you do your wraps. I gotta make sure you leave your hole there because you gotta go back through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And that hole, you want to go down. You want to go down the hole since you came up on the other side. And once you cinch it all together, oh, I'm doing this with just a little bit of light. Let me do this again. All right. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and come up through. You got to have some serious hands to do this. Get my hands right. should look like this. And that's your blood knot. I had a hard time turning that darn thing with such low light. I'm doing this at night. Been busy during the day. But hey, we got it done. So those are the lines that I use. Those are the knots that I use. And like I said, depending on the diameter of the line would depend on how many wraps you use. Most times for more thicker line, you use a little bit less wraps. And that's with all knots, well, except for the Palomar. The Palomar will work on thick diameter line, but it will bite into itself a whole lot more. You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy. But hey, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video and you enjoyed my mistakes, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.